Hi, fellow Defenders. This is Derek, one of your hosts of Defenders TV podcast. We split out our discussion about the cancellation of Luke Cage Season 3 into this episode separately from our normal review episodes for Daredevil Season 3. We went pretty in-depth into it. We had intended it to just be a couple of minutes on our intro to our Daredevil Season 3, Episode 3 review, but it turned into a much more deep discussion and thought it would work better as an episode on its own. So myself, Chris, and John all got together to discuss the sad news about the cancellation of the second of the Marvel Netflix TV shows. Sadly, fellow Defenders, the announcement has come in today that Luke Cage will not be getting a third season on Netflix. Netflix officially made the announcement alongside Marvel in a brief statement yesterday. There is an article in Deadline, which I'm going to put into our show notes. But if you go over to Deadline and have a look for the article about the cancellation of Luke Cage, there are lots and lots of details in there as to why the show seemingly was cancelled. Seems like they've got a lot of information on the behind-the-scenes process on Luke Cage. It seems like Chio Hodari Coker has been writing episodes for the show along with his writer's room for 6 months. There was a lot of back and forth with Netflix and Marvel, taking notes, as there always would be on a show like this, but he delivered his final draft of the show 2 days ago. The response from Netflix, according to Deadline, is that they asked for the show to be cut from 13 episodes to 10 after he's now delivered what would be a fifth or sixth draft, a final draft at this stage. And it seems like now Netflix and Marvel are on opposite sides of this decision of what would happen to Luke Cage. So Netflix have made the decision to cancel Luke Cage Season 3. So unfortunately, while Mike Coulter is signed up to play the character of Luke Cage again, it seems like, much like Iron Fist, we're not going to get solo shows under these showrunners again. Sad news.
Yeah, absolutely. Me sad, me not have words to fully describe pain. I think this is really sad. And I think what makes it even more bittersweet is the fact that there is a script or scripts out there for, or a treatment for a 13 episode season 3 of Luke Cage, which, for Iron Fist, that maybe wasn't the case at all. So, I think it makes it even kind of a more bittersweet, really, to be honest. It's sad news. And for me, I suppose I'm just slightly nervous, with regards to the other shows. I mean, at the moment, the talk around Daredevil season 3 is absolutely epic. And so you would think, that he's safe. It was also great for Luke Cage season 2 and obviously things haven't worked out there. But, just a little nervous for the remaining Netflix shows, to be honest, the Marvel Netflix shows, because certainly, I mean, given how jam-packed it has been this year with these shows, increasingly looking back now, reflectively on the different shows, certainly Jessica Jones season 2 seems to be, for me, to have been maybe the least solid of the shows. And so obviously Jessica Jones has gotten season 3, and that is great news in itself. But you just wonder, is this now just starting to weed out these shows, and maybe reboot them in some way?
Sorry, Chris, I know you want to get in on this as well, because this is a bit of a hot topic for all of us. We're all kind of reeling a little bit from the news. I think my concern personally, my bigger concern, is the fact that this seems to be a creative differences concept here. The reason why Luke Cage got cancelled is because the showrunner who brought this show to life and gave us the whole world of Harlan's Paradise and brought the whole show together for 2 seasons, brought his treatment for what he wanted to do a third season, and they said no, and then cancelled the show. That makes me more concerned for those shows. We know that Melissa Rosenberg has already tendered her resignation, I suppose, on Jessica Jones. She said it is her show. She's done the first 2 seasons. She'll do a third, and then she's done. That's almost in the bag. That will definitely be coming out. We'll see her vision 3 seasons as it is. Steve Lightfoot has delivered Punisher season 2 and season 1, so it's his vision that's on screen for those 2 seasons. And Chio Coker was so integral to Luke Cage and has now been told, that's it, we're done with the show. That's more my concern. I'm not concerned that we're going to lose all the Netflix Marvel shows. I'm concerned that the characters are going to be given over to standard writers who don't have the same skin in the game, like a Chio Coker or a Steve Lightfoot or a Melissa Rosenberg. That's kind of where my concern is.
I'm starting to read between the lines. And I think that's what we need to do with this. I think the Deadline article was very, if it is all to be believed, because again, it should be noted right now that none of this has been confirmed by any of the staff, or we have no inside sources. This is again just what these reporters are saying. Yep. Not saying that it's wrong, but if we are to fully believe that, plus Melissa leaving, plus the season 2 of Iron Fist changing showrunners, and potentially there was a lot more involvement than we originally believed by Marvel TV in these shows. Because if you start to think that Melissa saying, "Hey, I'm done after season 3," you could believe that potentially she had done a few of these and was to the point where it's like, I can't deal with Marvel sticking in so much.
Okay. Now, in fairness, the reason why Melissa Rosenberg has left is because she's inked an overall deal to develop up to 12 shows, I think it is, for the CW. So she's gotten a huge role outside of the Netflix universe. So that is the reason she's leaving, is my understanding. She was effectively poached by the Warner Brothers side of the world. She was poached by them as opposed to leaving because of any kind of creative differences. This is the first time I've heard of specific creative differences with Netflix. In fact, the interview that we did with Chio Coker specifically spoke about the fact that all of these showrunners have kind of a central room where they all get together and all share ideas for their shows. It felt really like a creative environment that these shows are made in.
Yeah,
so I think
and they collaborate with Marvel as well through Jeff Loeb and Joe Quesada, as well as probably the team from Netflix, where they see and give ideas and so on. Yeah, I think that seems to be the difference here, is that there is a creative difference here between Marvel and Chio Coker on one side, and then Netflix, who are looking for a 10 episode treatment like Iron Fist got. And of course, it seems as though Chio Coker has changed and really tried to incorporate some of the things that Netflix have wanted, judging by this article. But now he said, I can only go so far without ultimately changing what I believe and want to have as my story on the page. You know? I think all these things are very collaborative, but I suppose ultimately there comes a point if one side seems to dominate, or there's no further room for compromise around that creative process. So, I mean, it's kind of interesting, really, as you say, that this seems to be the first one where there is some kind of creativity difference.
Yeah.
I'm sort of wary about where this will lead to, and I think that's probably where all the fellow defenders, including us three as hosts, is where this leaves us, because we know we have Jessica Jones season 3, Punisher season 2, that those are in the bag, finished filming, wrapped, in post-production now. Nothing has been announced further. That being said, the Luke Cage Always Forward leaving post and the Iron Fist will I think, what was it? Not Iron Fist will return, but Iron Fist is immortal. In some form. So the question I then am interested to see is, okay, well, maybe this is the singular character arcs are gone, but what we might get is, as we discussed in, say, Iron Fist season 2, we may get a Heroes for Hire. We may get a Daughters of the Dragon. They may test other characters, such as, and I know into the Moon Knight, a Moon Knight podcast will be up in arms. They may actually do a Moon Knight. We may actually get, like, crazily, like a Night Thrasher or things like that.
I think it's very likely we're going to see our four main characters who now no longer have a show: Colleen Wing, Danny Rand, Luke Cage, and Misty Knight. I think we're going to see the four of them again in a crossover show like Heroes for Hire. I think it's likely that if they do that, it'll be a one-off event like Defenders with an 8-episode series to see how it works having the four of those without a big showrunner behind them, see how those characters play off each other and see which ones might split off into their own seasons in future. But yeah, this does feel like the comic book world at the moment as well, where we have a lot of Marvel digital firsts are out there with Jessica Jones, Luke Cage, Iron Fist, having their digital comics being produced, seeing if there's any interest in them, and only then they start printing them and selling them in comic book shops.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what this is starting to feel like. It feels like unless you're doing an Avengers on TV every week, it's not going to be supported by Netflix, which, when you see what's happening over in the Warner Brothers DC side of things, where they're basically giving 25 episode seasons to a story that could probably sustain about 3 episodes of a Netflix show. it's so harsh to think they're pulling these shows from us fans who are really enjoying them.
Yeah, exactly. You could go down the Belanti-verse route, but I don't think anyone wants that.
No, not even DC fans want that.
No, but then we do have potentially what the DC Online is doing with Titans, where this seems a darker, more gritty kind of. It's a Netflix version of the DC Universe Titans, kind of Teen Titans, apparently.
Yeah, you do kind of wonder if the conversation at Netflix HQ this week with Jeff Loeb was, well, if you want it so bad, why don't you make it over on your own streaming service, your Disney competitive service that's going up against Netflix next year? Why don't you just take it and move it over there? But they can't do that. I want to just silence some of the commenters that have been out there saying, well, that's okay, we'll have Iron Fist and Luke Cage over on the Disney streaming service. Mike Coulter and Finn Jones are contracted by Netflix for their shows. They are absolutely not going to have them appear in Daredevil in the future, in Jessica Jones in the future, and also their own streaming shows over in the Disney streaming service. It's not going to happen. Either they're going to completely separate them out of the universe and possibly recast, which I don't want, or this will be the end of these characters having shows for a long period of time. Or they're going to stay and have the one-off Heroes for Hire show.
Yeah. So I think potentially, because the mouse owns Marvel, what they could do, which I don't see them doing, is buying these stars out of their contracts. Okay, we're not saying it's impossible that they'll be moved over to the other streaming service, and Chio will be given, okay, hey, look, we'll make it for you. Bring over everyone. We'll buy out your contracts. That is highly unlikely, unfortunately, because we're talking 8 figures. When you start adding everything together, it could be more, and I don't see them doing it.
I think they have enough on their plate. I think they're going to be developing their own TV shows from scratch, and the idea of bringing over a Netflix show that's already 2 seasons in, starting it off over on their own network, it sounds really complicated. I just don't see that happening for a long time until they want to sometime down the road, I suppose. But
exactly, I think what we'll end up getting is, as I said, personally, right now, I think what they'll do is, as you said, we'll get a Heroes for Hire, or I think actually the Daughters of the Dragon and Heroes for Hire may blend together. As you said, you'll get all 4 of those characters together. They'll call it probably Heroes for Hire, and the Daughters of Dragons will be some of those heroes. And I think we'll get a treatment of that. I think we'll get all 4 characters together. The Daughters of the Dragon will become part of the Heroes for Hire, and it'll be the 4 of them, etc. I think ultimately, I don't know if it'll be an 8-episode treatment. I think they may extend it for a full season, but it will be a test, as you said. I think what Netflix are potentially doing right now is probably shopping for 1 or 2 more characters, but not aggressively. You've got to remember, they've got all of Miller World.
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Coming down the road. Yeah. We got Jared Way's Umbrella Academy. They have a lot of superhero, supervillain shows in the works already. Yeah. So I think probably this will slow down the trickle of what we get from a Marvel Netflix collaboration coming in. But that being said, we don't know. And I think what I want our fellow friends to remember is no one knows. Unless you work for Marvel or Netflix, you have, there is going to be nonstop rumors for the next 2 to 3 weeks, and potentially 6 months, until they make a mass announcement. And in terms of how they are going to progress forward. So probably whatever the first big Comic-Con next year is, that's where we'll get some form of Netflix announcement. That gives them a good 6 to 8 months to really understand what they want to do.
I don't agree. I'm expecting that we're going to get an announcement of a Daredevil season 4 within the next 3 or 4 weeks, if there is going to be one. And that gives us our indication. What Netflix have been constantly saying, in fact, they made an announcement earlier on this week at an earnings call where Netflix said, these are our shows. It's our decision whether we cancel them or not. That was very specifically stated in response to a question about the cancellation of Iron Fist, when someone was effectively kind of suggesting that they were going to just give up on all of them and they were all going to move over to Disney streaming service, or they'd lost a contract or something like that. But apparently they're saying they will cancel them if they choose to cancel them, not on anybody else's head.
Yeah, I mean, I think the interesting thing here, and I suppose, with an eye on Daredevil, the current season, is that, after the first seasons and the second season of Daredevil, of these shows, the confirmation of a second season or the follow-up season was very, very quick. For me, I was getting nervous that Luke Cage hadn't had that and now on to season 3 in the same way that Jessica Jones had. Again, that's another example of where it's really quite quickly was confirmed that we were getting another season of Jessica Jones. And we didn't get that with Luke Cage. And obviously then with Iron Fist, it really was very quickly mentioned and announced that we weren't getting any more Iron Fist. So
that was cancelled within the month of it being released.
Yeah, so I think ultimately it'll be very interesting to see what happens after Daredevil. I mean, he is the granddaddy of the Marvel Netflix. He kicked all of this off. He certainly got, the unexpected season 2 there quickly off the bat, where we then got introduced to Elektra and the Punisher. So I think that will be the interesting thing for me. And that's not to say that that will happen like that. It's just I will get increasingly nervous that Daredevil will also be going. I mean, I think for me, this is just, as you say, Chris, we don't know what the plans Marvel or Netflix have for some of these shows, what the trajectory of these episodes are. So it's really about seeing what happens. It's just increasingly I will probably get more and more nervous for these shows on Netflix. But then I suppose everything has that cycle. So
the concern is that this isn't about quality as well. This isn't like Iron Fist was cancelled because it was bad, or Luke Cage was cancelled because it was bad. Both had very, very positive responses. Our understanding as well is that Luke Cage had a much higher audience as well. This has come down to cancelling it because of creative differences, and that's where the challenge is. Guys, I'm going to actually probably break this out as its own episode, rather than have this as our discussion going into the third episode of Daredevil, because I think this is that big a topic that it does need to be kind of out on its own.
I agree with both of you, and I think we're all on the same page. I think Daredevil will probably get its announcement in the coming weeks if the reviews are as positive as you think. I was more kind of talking to, let's call it the future of the universe. Because what we will do is get Jeff probably come out at some point to say, hey, you have Jessica Jones coming next year. You have Jessica Jones coming this year. You have Punisher coming this year. And you know what? Here are 3, and they'll just put title cards probably of what's coming in the future. They'll need to roadmap this, because additionally, what will end up happening is people will start to question. And we do, as geeks, nerds, fans of this genre, fans of these shows, we gulp down a lot of the information. Yeah. So what if you place a vacuum on information, the vacuum is filled by speculation. Yeah. So I feel what they'll probably do is they'll probably this kind of closes off in my view kind of where we goes. We'll get a Daredevil announcement most likely if the reviews are as positive as we think they are towards the end of the show. We'll get hey, Daredevil will be back next in the future in season 4. We'll get that announcement. They'll go dark. They'll build together what their roadmap is. Then they'll come out and announce it. And that's very much kind of going, hey, the universe is here. Harlot, the Hell's Kitchen is around. This is what you need to know. Yeah. And I think that then nails everything down, I think is probably the best way of putting it. But again, who knows? I suppose that's the big thing. Like, none of us work there. So let's wait and see and try and keep all the conversations in Defenders TV podcast group as genuine and happy as possible.
Absolutely. I do wonder if this may cause some kind of schism between Netflix and Marvel TV, though. They haven't signed up any other characters that we're aware of. So if they're going to Marvel looking for more shows in the future, I wonder if Marvel may say, we have our own avenue for those now. You have what you have, kind of thing. So it's a possibility too. What I suppose, let's close it out with the irony, because everybody knows the irony, but we might as well hit the nail on the head like we do often on these shows. The irony, obviously, in comic books, Luke Cage was chosen as a character to represent blaxploitation movies, which were very popular in the 70s in comic books. Then, obviously, Iron Fist was chosen to represent kung fu movie culture, which was very popular in the 70s, and both of their books got cancelled. I believe both on quite big cliffhangers as well. And then they merged the two of them together and created Powerman and Iron Fist. They created the Heroes for Hire, so that they could sell those two characters again. So potentially this merging of those two characters and their two worlds, which seem incompatible right now on screen as to where we left Danny Rand at the end of season 2 of Iron Fist and where Luke Cage is at the end of season 2 of Luke Cage. But you never know. Maybe we'll get the best possible show out of the merging of these two characters in the future.
Exactly. Let's stay positive.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, fellow defenders, for listening to our rant about the cancellation of Luke Cage. Really sad to hear that. We have obviously got reviews of all 26 episodes of the Luke Cage series, plus the 8 episodes of the Defenders, and our interview with the fantastic showrunner of Luke Cage, Chio Adari Coker, for your listening pleasure on our feed over at DefendersTVPodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us for this discussion, fellow defenders. It's very sad news, as you can probably tell. We're all a bit raw about it still. But we will be back with good news this week with our review of episode 3 of Daredevil season 3, which will be out on Tuesday, the 23rd of October, with our in-depth discussion and continuation of that series of discussions. Thanks so much for joining us for all of our discussions about Luke Cage. And I guess we'll leave you for the final time with our music for Luke Cage done by Mississippi MacDonald as always. Thank you. Bye.